Hey kids, I wish I was there, but just because I'm not there doesn't mean we can't have some Harry Potter time. So, chapter 4. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said stupidly. There was a crash behind them, and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hand. Now they knew what had been in the long, thin package he had brought with them. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." There was a pause. Then, smash! The door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges, and with, a deafening crash, landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard. But you could make out his eyes, glinting like black beetles under his hair. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooped so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into the frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. "Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could ya?" It's not been an easy journey." He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen with fear. "Budge up, you great lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran and hid behind his mother, who was crouching terrified behind Uncle Vernon. "And here's Harry," said the giant. Harry stood up into the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the beetle eyes were crinkled with a smile. "Last time I saw you, you was only a baby," said the giant. "You look a lot like your dad, but you got your mom's eyes." Uncle Vernon made a funny, rasping noise. "I demand that you leave at once, sir," he said. "You are breaking and entering." "Ah, shut up, Dursley." "Ah, great prune," said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hand, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into the corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trotted on. "Anyway, Harry," said the giant, turning his back on the Dursleys, "a very happy birthday to you. Got something for you here. I might have sat on it at some point, but it'll taste all right." From an inside pocket of his black overcoat, he pulled a slightly squashed box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake. Whoa! With a "Happy Birthday, Harry" written on it in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on the way out of his mouth, and what he said instead was, "Who are you?" The giant chuckled. "True, I haven't introduced myself. Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of the keys and grounds at Hogwarts." He held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about that tea then, eh?" he said, rubbing his hands together. I'd not say no ter somewhat stronger if you got it, if you mind." I have no idea what that meant. His eyes fell on the empty grate with the shivering chip bags in it and snorted. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see what he was doing, but when he drew back a second later, there was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole damp hut with flickering light, and Harry felt the warmth wash over him as though he had sunk into a hot bath. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which sagged under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of his pockets of his coat. A copper kettle, a squashy package of sausage, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of amber liquid that he had to swig before starting to make tea. Soon the hut was full of sounds and smells of sizzling sausage. Nobody said a thing while the giant was working, but as he slid the first 6 fat, juicy, slightly burnt sausages from the poker, Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled darkly. "Your great puddin' of a son doesn't need fattening any more, Dursley. Don't worry." He passed the sausage to Harry, who was so hungry he had never tasted anything so wonderful. But he still couldn't take his eyes off the giant. Finally, as no one seemed about to explain anything, he said, "I'm sorry, but I still don't know who you are." The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Call me Hagrid," he said. "Everyone does, and like I told you, I'm the keeper of the keys at Hogwarts. You know all about Hogwarts, of course." No," said Harry. Hagrid looked shocked. "Sorry," Harry said quietly. "Sorry?" barked Hagrid, turning to stare at Dursley, who shrank back into the shadows. It's them as should be sorry. I knew you weren't good or letter, but I never thought you wouldn't even know about Hogwarts. For crying out loud. Did you wonder where your parents learned it all?" "All what?" asked Harry. "All what?" Hagrid thundered. Now, wait just a second. He had leapt to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to fill the whole hut. The Dursleys were cowering against the wall. "Do you mean to tell me," he groaned at the Dursleys, "that this boy knows nothing about nothing?" Harry thought this was going a bit far. He had been to school, after all, and his marks weren't bad. "I know some things," Harry said. "I can, do math and stuff." But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, "About our world, I mean. Your world, my world, your parents' world." "What world?" Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. "Dursley!" he boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like "Mibble wibble." Hagrid stared wildly at Harry. "But you must know about your mom and dad," he said. "I mean, they're famous. You're famous." "What? My mom and dad weren't famous, were they?" "Yeah, don't you know? You don't know." Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildering stare. "You don't know what you are," he said finally. Uncle Vernon suddenly found a voice. "Stop!" he commanded. "Stop right there, sir. I forbid you to tell that boy anything." A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have quivered under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. Now Hagrid spoke, his every syllable trembling with rage. You never told him. Never told him what was the letter from Dumbledore? The letter that Dumbledore had left for him? I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it, Dursley. And you've kept it from him all these years? Kept what from me? Said Harry eagerly. Stop! I forbid you! Yelled Uncle Vernon in panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. Ah, go boil your beard, both of you, said Hagrid. Harry, you're a wizard. There was a silence inside the hut. Only a sea of whistling could be heard. I'm a what? Gasped Harry. A wizard, of course, said Hagrid, sitting back down on the sofa, which groaned and sank ever lower. And a thumpin' good 'un, I'd say. Once you've been trained up a bit, with a mom and a dad like yours, what else would you be? And I reckon it's about time that you read your letter. Harry stretched out his hands at last to take the yellowish envelope addressed in emerald green to Mr. H. Potter. The floor, hut on the rock, the sea. He pulled out the letter and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore. Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Sorcerer, Chief Warlock, Supreme Magwump, International Confederacy of Wizards. Dear Harry Potter. And we will continue when I come home. I love you guys. Holly?